for the 24th congressional seat. Welcome to the show again, Thomas.
Thank you, Stuart. Good to be here.
I wanted to remind our listeners what the communities are that are in the 24th district. So go ahead and tell folks what part of California you're running for Congress from.
Right. This is a district that covers from Atascadero, which is in San Luis Obispo County, clear down along the coast to all of Santa Barbara County, Santa Maria, all the cities along the coast, and it goes clear down to Ventura, the city.
The city of Ventura.
The bottom of Ventura. So I got 3 counties. I'm traveling all over the place, getting endorsements from 3 counties. But that's what it entails.
It's a lot of driving. I do, having run for office myself, I know that it becomes a full-time job just to get out there and talk to people. So
yeah, I like to do it. I do Zoom as well. That seems pretty good in some cases too. So.
Sure. Well, we had Congressman Carrbajal on, and we've had Congressman Panetta on to talk about the National Security and Border Act of 2024 that was filibustered in the Senate, but I understand that there's a standalone bill on just the Ukraine, Israeli, and Taiwanese defense bill in the House now that was part of that bill. And some of the folks I understand are trying to tack on now the border aspects in the House of Representatives. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell listeners what you thought of the National Security and Border Act of 2024 and how you'd be voting on it if it did get to the House and you were there.
Yeah, thank you. I did prepare, having this bill in front of me, reading through it today. It's pretty short, considering it's like only 7 pages long, the Senate bill. Mm-hmm. And it proposes to give money to help Ukraine and help Taiwan and help other nations that need help. It even gives money to Arab nations. And the first thing I wanted to put forward is I have a set of metrics that I want to just talk about briefly. This would be like Cole's funding metrics, because people need to know what standards I might have. And there's just 4 or 5 points here. One is that I would not be funding proxy wars, since I'm the pro-peace Republican.
Okay.
Number 1 on my list is no funding proxy wars, and that'll become clear as I talk more about this. I also don't fund open U.S. borders. I'm not somebody that would fund that. I'm a close the borders guy, make America safe. Number 3, I'm against funding belligerent states, and this is the third one. For instance, Gaza, I consider as a belligerent state. I would not fund Gaza. And with that, I would say no funding of Arab nations, because they're already rich. I don't think we need to fund them, but we are. The corollary to all that is that we support peace through strength and diplomacy, rather than funding proxy wars with money that we don't have. And this is the other side of that funding issue, is that the U.S. is broke. We should face it. Many senators are facing it, a handful, like Rand Paul. And any money that we send to Ukraine or Taiwan is borrowed money. And so we don't have the money. We shouldn't spend it, and we shouldn't borrow it from China and put it onto the backs of our young people to support a proxy war. So now, with all that said, those are my metrics that can be used. And so we're looking at the bill. Right off the bat, assistance to Ukraine. And it says $15 billion for support of Ukraine through military training, intelligence, and another $43 billion for war capacity, munitions capacity.
Well, now you disagree with the New York Post then, which noted that the $40 billion was basically money that was going to U.S. Jobs and defense industry to boost our economy, but by building the ammunition and the missiles and the anti-missile equipment that we're sending to Ukraine. We were sending to Ukraine before the funding got cut off. Do you disagree with the fact that most of that money is actually staying here and generating more economic benefit for Americans?
Well, I disagree that is a good enough reason to fund a proxy war against a nuclear-armed opponent, Russia, with money that we don't have. That's no matter how you spend the money for war, whether it goes to our munitions people who then send it to Ukraine, it's still funding a proxy war. So it's like a broken record. It simply will not fund proxy wars. We don't belong in Ukraine. In the first place is my position as a peace Republican. I will stand by that position because Ukraine war has been a waste of life, a terrible tragedy that should have been avoided. And for many reasons, moving NATO into Ukraine was a trigger that simply should not have been done, and it's against various treaties over the years that were made even clear back in Jim Baker's times.
Congressional candidate Thomas Cole about his race for the 24th Congressional District against Salud Carrbajal. Now, Thomas, you were saying that you just didn't think we should be involved in any proxy wars. And I guess the big nut to crunch is that, from all accounts, Vladimir Putin has been talking pretty openly about, and apparently there's some intelligence reports that support this, of either invading Estonia or Poland, both of which are part of NATO. How do you think we should respond if he does that?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm not an absolute expert on European war policy, but I know that when we think about Russia, we do kind of have to consider Russia's been invaded so many times. I mean, you go back to 1237, the Mongols invaded Russia. The Ottomans invaded Russia in 1570. The Swedes in 1708. Napoleon in 1812. Japan in 1905. And the U.S. intervened in 1918 to help the Bolshevik Revolution slaughter the Russian royal family. So, and then, of course, Germany invaded Russia. So they are not immune from being paranoid about being invaded by Europe, Western Europe. And when they, what's been happening is they've been moving NATO into more of these nations surrounding Russia. And as RFK has pointed out just recently, RFK Jr. is pointing out that when a nation joins NATO, they have to arm up with a list of American weapons manufacturers' equipment, and so there's
there's French manufacturers and there's British manufacturers and German manufacturers. They make pretty decent weaponry. Aren't they arming up with those too?
No, the point is mostly it's Raytheon and Boeing, and what happens is that's a big boom for our munitions manufacturers, and then those munitions get in there, and then what's been happening is that BlackRock actually has a monopoly holdings on most of those big munitions companies. And then they make out. So everybody makes out selling these munitions, and then they've blown Ukraine to bits with $200 billion, basically, killed 500,000 people, and now there's even contracts going out rebuild Ukraine, and that's going to be like $500 billion just to rebuild it. It's not even done with the war yet.
I think
And
that's
those
what
contracts-
President Zelensky said, was they were going to need $550 billion to rebuild.
Yeah, so, and then the clincher is, as RFK has been pointing out, the clincher is those rebuild contracts are held, again, by BlackRock. And so this is the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about and JFK tried to warn us about. And so simply saying I'm not going to fund any war isn't right, but I'm not going to fund any proxy war. So that's kind of where I would leave that.
Well, I guess the question is, would you think that defending the NATO countries would be a proxy war, or would you classify that as a treaty commitment that we've made that actually is, treaties become part of the Constitution once they're ratified?
It's a proxy war. It's not a war that involves the U.S. Now, NATO, we have treaties to help NATO countries, but NATO has a responsibility to not instigate and not try to
not invade their neighbors
from Russia. And one of the main things Russia insists in that these treaties also involve is not arming up Ukraine with NATO arms, with NATO weapons, with bioweapons labs.
Well, Thomas, I thought we ended up when we got Ukraine to give up their nuclear armaments, because they were a nuclear armed state. I thought we made a treaty with them that we would guarantee their. The U.S. made a treaty that the U.S. would guarantee their territorial integrity, which of course got violated in 2014 when Crimea was taken and part of the Donbass was taken.
Yes, well, we have treaties upon treaties.
We do.
But we certainly don't have a good reason to go in and arm up countries that were supposed to be disarmed, completely buffer states. That's Ukraine, and that was even a previous treaty. But these are things that diplomats should be working out. But instead, we have, the CIA and the munitions contractors working together to foment war in the region and increase the number of NATO states to increase weapons sales.
All right.
And then they blow the living daylights out of Ukraine, and then who comes in? BlackRock comes in to rebuild Ukraine. So it's a cycle of death, and I would not be voting for that. Now,
Okay.
I'm sure I'm not going to get the BlackRock donations.
They're not going to fund your campaign, I'm sure. Let's talk about...
for instance, my opponent gets plenty of munitions money. So that's the thing.
Well, Thomas, let's talk a little bit about the other part of the National Security and Border Act of 2024 that had to do with changing the laws that affect immigration and the border and doing some funding. One of the things I noticed when I looked through it was that, for instance, there was $5.3 billion that was in that bill to increase the number of Border Patrol officers and streamline the hiring so that you could, I think there was a huge number, if I remember right, something like 1,300 new Border Patrol officers that would immediately end up getting hired. Was that something that you thought was an improvement, or how did you react to that part of the bill?
Yeah, I looked at that, and I'm just saying, as others have said, it's a political move. It's not something that would actually increase closing the border, which is what I'm interested in. I mean, I'm looking at it provides $1.5 billion to hire immigration judge teams, including attorneys, administrators, and interpreters.
Well, now, Thomas, as an attorney, I think it's important to hire attorneys.
Individuals and families in court proceedings. So that's not closing the borders. That's just making them come through faster, for instance.
Well, actually, if you read, and I know you did read this, some of the summaries, this would increase the speed with which determinations on asylum would be made, and there was actually a huge amount of money set aside to fly people out of the country on the presumption that they'd fail in their immigration applications. So it would speed that process up so that people could be deported in a 90-day period.
Yeah, but I'm not buying it, because we can simply close the border with a wall and run barbed wire, and people would not be getting in, and it wouldn't cost billions and billions of dollars.
So you didn't think the $650 million to build and reinforce miles and miles of new border wall was something that was enough in the bill?
Yeah, well, when they throw that in as an afterthought, and there's even more money to hire immigration lawyers to bring people in, I'm not buying it. I think it's just a political trick, so that the Republicans could say, "Oh, we can blame the Republicans. Look, they gave them a good border wall, and they didn't vote for it." See, but I would not vote for it as they stripped it out of the Senate bill, which was a good idea. So yeah, it's just a paper tiger. That's all.
All right.
No, I'm not buying it. I've written hundreds of contracts. This is just boilerplate.
All right. Well, we're coming.
Break them up. Break those bills up, and have them voted on separately. Why can't we?
In the 24th district, which is most of San Luis Obispo County from Atascadero south, and all of Santa Barbara County, and Thomas, it also includes Ventura City, doesn't it?
Yeah, I have 80,000 voters in Ventura County.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, now, I want to get into the campaign a little bit, but before we leave the National Security and Border Act and the changes to the border enforcement that it would have worked, I did notice that there was a $1.4 billion to provide many, many, many more immigration judges in that bill, and that also would speed up the process of deciding whether or not somebody had a right to come into the country for asylum, and it tightened up what the standards for asylum were, so that it would be quite a few less people would actually qualify, and if you didn't qualify, you would get flown out of the country. Was that something that you thought wasn't enough? Did you have some other ideas about that? Do you want to do away with the ability of people to ask for asylum?
I would certainly not want asylum for just everyone. But in this particular bill, it's a paper tiger. We had Remain in Mexico working fine just a few years ago, and that didn't cost $1 billion extra. It just simply was a policy of the executive. And now we have to pay billions of dollars to get it. I'm just not buying it. It's a sleight of hand. So. Well,
but Thomas, to be fair, that was a policy that could be done by executive order, because there already was a law that said that if there was a pandemic, basically, that's the way it didn't say that exactly, but that's what it meant. If there was a pandemic where there was risk of people coming in with infections, the executive had the right to close off the border, but without that, the executive didn't have that right. And even though the Biden administration extended it, the court said at some point, you can't extend it any further because the pandemic's over.
Yes, there's always some way around it, but the basic thing is America does not want 8 million people every 2 years coming in unannounced.
No question about that.
And it ruins everything for us here. It ruins our housing. We have no housing. We have no money to pay for all these people. They're not bringing any money. They're not bringing any skills. So it's really, any way we can do it, we just simply have to close the border, remain in Mexico, and work on keeping our nation safe and taking care of our own problems before we accept immigrants from all over the world.
All right. Well, Thomas, how's the campaign going? How's your fundraising going?
Oh, it's just going just slowly, but we're about 1,000 to 1 on the ratio between Carvajal and myself.
Okay. And where's most of yours coming from?
40,000. I think he has around 2 million. So
all right.
I'm trying to catch up. It's a slow climb, but I'm sure things will pick up as we go. And there's basic differences between myself, which I would like the borders closed. I would like to not spend $200 billion on wars in foreign countries, whereas Salud Carrbajal wants the borders open for God knows what reason, and wants to spend money, endless money, on endless wars. So these are two big issues that I'm going to be pretty much harping on, because these are issues that people care about. If you can't get an apartment and there's illegal aliens everywhere getting free money, you're going to wonder, why am I voting for Salud Carrbajal? Why don't I vote for Cole? At least he wants the borders closed and wants to, save American apartments for Americans. And create more jobs here in America rather than destroying our energy industry, which Salud Carrbajal is also very interested in, stopping our good oil jobs, our good energy jobs. And I'm pro-energy, a mix of energy. Mm-hmm. Save American oil. We have the most beautiful oil and gas in the world, and yet it's being banned by Salud and the Biden administration. So those are three big points right there that my campaign is focused on. These are issues that people really care about. So,
well, it's true that the entire district is lying above the Monterey Shale, which is either the largest or the second largest oil deposit in the country. But let's go to a couple of other issues, if you don't mind, Thomas.
Sure.
I saw that the Republican chair of the Finance Services Committee, Patrick McHenry, thought there was about a 50-50 chance that the House of Representatives would shut down the government or fund the government before the deadline comes up this March. And he was saying that if the Speaker just let the Appropriations Committee work on it without interference, that they'd have a deal by March 1st or at the latest March 8th. What's your position on whether the House of Representatives should shut down the government or as a bargaining chip, or move forward to have an appropriation so the government can stay open?
Yes, that's always a touchy issue, and it keeps reoccurring because of the continuing resolutions that they just pass and just passes everything and kicks the can down the road. So they never really deal with the fact that the U.S. is broke. We don't have any money. We just don't have any. And just printing more is not going to help either. It simply devalues the money, and that hurts everyone, especially people on pensions. Even government pensions get devalued by the printing of money.
Okay, well, let's
really what has to happen is there has to be cuts. I mean, I know there's a lot of money we can't cut because it's already guaranteed, but certainly we don't need to spend 200 or 500 billion in a foreign country to kill 500,000 people.
All right, well, we only have a little time left, so here's another question for you. The 2010 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that essentially gave an exemption on the estate tax to the point where you can leave almost $28 million if you're a married couple to your heirs without an estate tax. That's coming up for sunset in 2025. Would you vote to extend that, or would you vote to let it sunset?
If I can not tax people more, I would do it.
All right.
I'd like to give a tax break to married couples. I'd like to give them a $100,000 tax break to stay married, to support their children and families.
We have 30 seconds left, so do you have some last thoughts you want to leave our listeners with, Thomas? like how to contact your campaign.
Thanks. So certainly the website is thomascoultercongress.com, and the issues are, peace, parents, and borders, schools, school safety, parental rights, and keeping our borders closed, safe, so that we can have an organized nation and not just a free-for-all that's completely out of control. Those are the issues I would stand for, and my opponent is not interested in those issues.
Well, thanks for coming on SLO County Public Policy and the Law. Stay tuned, folks. We have bankers coming on in the next hour.
For more information on SLO County Public Policy and the Law, visit our website, knews985.com.